The inner game of everything. Master your mind, master your life. Introduction, the two voices. Let me ask you something. Have you ever noticed there are times when life just flows? You know exactly what to say at a party. A trade goes exactly as you planned. You're completely present with someone you love and everything feels effortless. And then there are other times. Times when you're frozen with fear. When you say something stupid. When you sell too early or hold on too long. When you're physically in the room with someone, but your mind is somewhere else entirely, replaying yesterday's mistake or rehearsing tomorrow's anxiety. What's the difference between these two states? Here's what I've discovered after years of studying this question from every angle I could find. From commodity trading floors to meditation halls, from pickup artist seminars to yoga classes, from books on masculine power to books on spiritual surrender. The difference is which voice you're listening to. We all have two voices inside us. The first is what I call the outer voice. That loud, anxious, never quiet voice that's been programmed into you by your parents, your schooling, your culture, your past failures. It's the voice that tells you you're not good enough. That you should have become a doctor instead of a trader. That she's out of your league. That you need to be right all the time. That you should apologize for existing. The second voice is what I call the inner voice. It's quieter, wiser. It doesn't panic when markets crash, or when a beautiful woman tests you, or when life throws you a curveball. It knows that losses are part of winning. It knows that being present is more powerful than being impressive. It knows that who you are matters more than what you know. Now here's what's fascinating, and this is the thread that connects everything we're going to explore together. Whether we're talking about trading commodities, or approaching women, or dealing with fear, or becoming a strong man in a weak world, the fundamental challenge is the same. It's learning to hear your inner voice over the noise of the outer voice. It's developing what I call inner game, the psychological foundation that makes everything else work. Think about it. You can learn the perfect trading system. You can memorize 100 clever openers. You can read every book on confidence ever written. But if your inner game isn't solid, if you're still operating from fear, from the need to be right, from the desperate hunger for approval, none of the techniques will work. Not consistently. Not when it counts. This is why, in my work, I've seen guys who knew everything about technical analysis blow up their accounts, while traders who'd done deep psychological work thrived through market crashes. I've seen men who studied seduction for years still freeze up around beautiful women, while men who learned to be present and unreactive had women approaching them. The outer techniques only work when the inner game is solid. So here's what we're going to do in this book. We're going to explore what it means to develop that inner game. We'll draw from the wisdom of market wizards who learned to keep losses small through emotional discipline. We'll learn from ancient traditions of meditation and surrender. We'll understand the psychology of attraction, not as manipulation, but as authentic presence. We'll look at what it means to be a strong man in a world that often seems designed to weaken you. And we'll tie it all together by understanding that the goal isn't to become someone else. It's to become more fully yourself. To remove the blocks and fears and programming that keep your inner voice buried under layers of noise. By the end of this journey, you won't need techniques. You'll have something better. The ability to be fully present, fully authentic, and fully powerful in any situation life throws at you. Ready? Let's begin. Part 1. The Machinery of the Mind. Understanding what's actually running the show. Chapter 1. The Two Systems. Chapter Summary. We'll explore the fundamental architecture of your mind, the emotional system that's always running in the background, and the analytical system you think is in charge. You'll learn why most of your decisions aren't actually made by your conscious mind, why this isn't necessarily a problem, and how understanding this dual system is the foundation for everything else we'll discuss. The operating system you never see. Here's something that might surprise you. You think you're making rational decisions. You think you're analyzing situations and coming to logical conclusions. You think you're in control. But actually, there's an entire operating system running in the background of your mind. and it's making most of your decisions before your conscious mind even gets involved. I learned this lesson the hard way, and I want to share it with you because understanding this completely transformed my life. When I first started trading commodities, I had what I thought was a perfect system. I'd done my homework, I'd studied the charts, I understood the fundamentals. I knew exactly what I should do. And then I'd do something completely different. I'd hold on to losing positions, hoping they'd come back. I'd sell winners too early because I was afraid of giving back profits. I'd put on trades that weren't in my plan because I was bored or anxious or chasing excitement. What was happening? Was I stupid? Was I undisciplined? Was I just not cut out for this? None of the above. What was happening was that my emotional operating system was running the show, and my conscious mind was just along for the ride, making up reasons afterward to justify what my emotions had already decided. This is what I've come to call the two systems. Think of it like a computer. System 1 is your emotional, intuitive, fast-acting operating system. It evolved over millions of years to keep you alive. It doesn't think, it reacts, it feels. It's always running, always scanning for threats and opportunities, always pushing you toward pleasure and away from pain. System 2 is your analytical, rational, slower-acting operating system. This is what you think of as you, the conscious mind that can do math, make plans, analyze situations, and make deliberate decisions. Here's the problem. System 1 is much faster than System 2, and System 1 is always running. By the time System 2 gets involved, System 1 has already made a decision, and System 2's job often becomes rationalizing that decision rather than questioning it. The emotional barometer. Let's make this concrete. Imagine you're considering approaching a woman at a bar. Before you've consciously decided anything, your System 1 has already scanned the situation. It's calculated the potential for rejection, pain, versus potential for connection, pleasure. It's accessed memories of past rejections and past successes. It's assessed the social dynamics of the room, and it's already made a decision, probably leaning toward, don't do it, it's too risky. Your System 2 then kicks in and starts making up reasons. She's probably not my type anyway. She looks busy. I don't want to interrupt her conversation. I'm not really in the mood tonight. Now here's the same scenario in trading. You have a position that's gone against you. Your System 1 is screaming, "Pain! Get out!" But at the same time, it's also saying, if you get out now and it comes back, you'll look stupid. And if you hold on, you haven't actually lost anything yet. It's just a paper loss. Your System 2 then rationalizes, the fundamentals haven't changed. This is just temporary volatility. I'll give it a little more room. In both cases, you're not making rational decisions. You're experiencing emotions and then making up stories to justify them. What this means for your life. Now here's the crucial insight that ties everything together. And I want you to really sit with this because it's the foundation for everything that follows. The emotions you're trying to avoid are actually running your life. Let me say that again. The feelings you don't want to feel, fear, uncertainty, rejection, looking stupid, being wrong. These feelings are so powerful that you've organized your entire life around avoiding them, and you don't even realize you're doing it. You hold on to losing trades because you're avoiding the feeling of being wrong. You don't approach women because you're avoiding the feeling of rejection. You stay in a job you hate because you're avoiding the feeling of uncertainty. You don't speak up because you're avoiding the feeling of judgment. But here's the twist, and this is where things get interesting. The people who are most successful in any area of life aren't people who don't feel these emotions. They're people who've learned to feel them without letting those feelings control their behavior. The professional trader takes the loss and feels the frustration, but does it anyway. The confident man approaches the woman and feels the anxiety, but does it anyway. The strong leader makes the unpopular decision and feels the judgment, but does it anyway. This is what we're going to explore throughout this book. How to develop the capacity to feel your emotions without being controlled by them. How to hear your inner voice over the screaming of your outer voice. How to develop what I call the abundance of losses, the understanding that small failures are not just acceptable but necessary, and that your willingness to experience them is directly proportional to your capacity for success. Key takeaway: you have an emotional operating system running in the background of everything you do. Understanding this system and learning to feel its signals without being controlled by them is the master skill that makes all other skills work. Reflection prompt. Think about a recent decision you made that you now regret. What were you feeling just before you made that decision? What feeling were you trying to avoid? What feeling were you trying to capture? Write down the emotional equation behind the decision. Chapter 2. The education you never got. Chapter summary. Our educational system trains us exclusively in System 2, analytical, rational, correct answer thinking, but life rewards System 1 wisdom, emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and the ability to act effectively under uncertainty. We'll explore why the accuracy model of education fails in the real world and what we need to learn instead. The accuracy trap. From the moment you entered kindergarten, you were trained in a very specific way of thinking. The teacher gives you information. You memorize it. You take a test. If you get enough questions right, you get an A. If you get too many wrong, you fail. This is what I call the accuracy model. It's based on a simple premise. Being correct is good, being incorrect is bad. The goal is to maximize your percentage of correct answers. Now here's the thing. This model works great for school. It even works for certain professions. If you're an accountant, you want to be right as close to 100% of the time as possible. But here's what nobody tells you. The accuracy model is absolutely devastating when applied to trading, relationships, leadership, or virtually any area of life that involves uncertainty. Let me give you an example that blew my mind when I first understood it. The mathematics of being wrong. Imagine a trader with the following record. 6 trades are losers. 4 trades are winners. On the surface, this looks terrible. He's wrong 60% of the time. In school, 40% is an F. You'd fail the class, your parents would be called in for a conference. But let's look closer. The 6 losing trades each lost 1,000 total losses. Total losses, 6,000. The 4 winning trades each made 10,000 total gains. Total gains, 40,000, 0 learned. Net result, plus 34,000. This trader is wrong more than half the time, yet he's wildly profitable. How? Because the size of your wins relative to your losses matters far more than how often you're right. This is the concept of mathematical expectation, and understanding it emotionally, not just intellectually, is one of the most important things you can do for yourself. The school system never taught you this. In school, every question is worth the same number of points. Getting 6 out of 10 wrong means you fail. But in life, some wins are worth 10 times what a loss costs you. Some relationships are transformative, while others are learning experiences. Some career moves change everything, while others are minor setbacks. The skill isn't being right all the time. The skill is keeping your losses small, while letting your wins run. Why smart people struggle most. Here's a paradox that might explain a lot about your own experience. The people who struggle most with trading and with life's uncertainties generally are often the most academically successful. The straight are students, the ones with advanced degrees, the ones who've built their entire identity around being the smartest person in the room. Why? Because being wrong is psychologically devastating for someone whose self-worth is built on being correct. If you got straight A's your whole life, your identity is wrapped up in accuracy. Being wrong doesn't just mean you made a mistake. It means something about who you are. It threatens your sense of self. So when a trade goes against you, you can't just take the loss and move on. Taking the loss means admitting you were wrong. And admitting you were wrong threatens who you are. So you hold on. You rationalize. You wait for it to come back. You turn a small loss into a catastrophic one. This isn't a knowledge problem. It's not that you don't understand that you should cut losses. It's that you can't execute on what you know because the emotional cost is too high. I saw this in myself when I first started trading. I had a trade in Intel that was up almost 10 times my money before the earnings announcement. But I didn't have a clear exit plan. When the stock sold off after the announcement, I watched my profits evaporate because I couldn't pull the trigger. Getting out meant accepting that I hadn't maximized the opportunity. It meant admitting that my fantasy of the perfect trade wasn't going to happen. I still made money on that trade, but I left so much on the table. The lesson cost me, but I learned it. Entry prices are for your ego. Protect your equity, not your need to be right. The alternative model. So if the accuracy model doesn't work, what does? I call it the self-awareness model. Instead of measuring yourself by how often you're right, you measure yourself by how well you follow your process, how small you keep your losses, and how much you learn from each experience. In this model, a good trade can be a losing trade, if you followed your rules and took the loss when you were supposed to. A bad trade can be a winning trade, if you broke your rules and just got lucky. The day you can tell me your best trade was a losing one, but one where you acted consistently with your methodology, that's the day you're onto something. And the day you can tell me that and be emotionally at peace with it, that's the day you start behaving like a professional in whatever field you're in. Key takeaway: the education system trained you to seek accuracy, but life rewards emotional discipline. Being wrong 60% of the time is fine if you keep your losses small and let your wins multiply. The goal isn't being right, it's being profitable, fulfilled, and at peace. Reflection prompt. Where in your life are you still playing by the accuracy model? Where are you letting the fear of being wrong keep you from taking necessary actions? What would change if you measured yourself by process rather than outcomes? Chapter 3. Your emotional operating system. Chapter summary. Everyone has an emotional system running in the background, a set of feelings they're trying to experience and feelings they're trying to avoid. This system determines your behavior more than your conscious intentions do. We'll learn how to identify your emotional operating system and begin to rewrite it. Intentions equal results. One of my mentors once said something that took me years to fully understand. Win or lose, everyone gets what they want from the market. At first, this seems absurd. Nobody wants to lose money. Nobody wants to get rejected. Nobody wants to fail, right? But on a deeper level, the level of System 1, your emotional operating system, you're getting exactly what you came for. Let me explain what I mean. People trade for more than the profit motive. They trade for excitement, for the feeling of being right, for the drama of big wins and the agony of big losses, for the story they get to tell themselves and others. If you're drawn to high-risk, high-leverage trading, what you're really seeking isn't just money. It's the feeling of being on the edge. The adrenaline, the sense that you're doing something dangerous and exciting. The money is just the vehicle. The emotions are the destination. This is true in every area of life. If you're drawn to the pick-up artist lifestyle, constantly approaching new women, always chasing the next conquest, what you're seeking isn't just sex. It's the validation, the proof that you're desirable, the ego boost of adding another notch to your belt. If you're drawn to being a nice guy who never asserts himself, what you're seeking isn't just harmony. It's the avoidance of conflict, the safety of never being rejected, the comfort of being liked. Your emotional goals will always override your stated goals. You can say you want to make money or find a great relationship or build a successful career. But if your emotional operating system is programmed for excitement or safety or validation, that's what you'll actually pursue, even if it sabotages your stated goals. The emotional system. Let's break this down more concretely. Every trading system, every set of rules for when to buy and sell, is also an emotion delivery system. When you put on a trade, you're not just putting capital at risk. You're creating a situation that will generate certain feelings. If the trade goes in your favor, you'll feel excitement, pride, confidence, validation. If the trade goes against you, you'll feel fear, anxiety, self-doubt, shame. If you take a loss, you'll feel frustration, regret, maybe relief if it could have been worse. If you take a profit, you'll feel satisfaction, accomplishment, maybe regret if you got out too early. Here's what's crucial to understand. You're drawn to certain trading systems because of the emotional experiences they provide, not just the potential profits. A breakout system that goes for big trends will give you long periods of small losses, punctuated by occasional enormous wins. The emotional experience is one of patience, frustration, and occasional euphoria. A scalping system that takes tiny profits many times per day will give you frequent small wins. The emotional experience is one of constant action and frequent validation. A mean reversion system that bets against extremes will give you a high win rate, but occasional catastrophic losses. The emotional experience is one of feeling smart most of the time, with rare but devastating periods of feeling stupid. Which system is best depends on which emotional experience you're most compatible with. A system that makes you feel terrible will be impossible to follow consistently, no matter how profitable it is. This is true of everything. Your choice of career, your choice of partner, your choice of hobbies, these aren't just practical decisions. They're emotional decisions. You're choosing the feelings you want to experience. The feelings you're avoiding. Here's where it gets really interesting and potentially uncomfortable. Just as you're drawn towards certain feelings, you're driven to avoid others. And the feelings you're avoiding have just as much power over you as the ones you're seeking. Think about the last time you didn't approach a woman you were attracted to. What stopped you? If you're honest, it was the fear of rejection, the potential feeling of humiliation, the sense that you'd be judged and found wanting. So you avoided that feeling. You stayed in your comfort zone. And in doing so, you got exactly what you wanted from the situation: safety. Think about the last time you held on to a losing trade too long. What stopped you from cutting the loss? The feeling of being wrong. The fear that you'd sell and then watch it rebound, making you feel stupid twice, once for being wrong and once for selling at the bottom. So you avoided that feeling. And in doing so, you got exactly what you wanted: the temporary comfort of not having to face your error. The feelings you're unwilling to feel are the bars of your prison. Every time you avoid a feeling, rejection, failure, uncertainty, looking stupid, you shrink your life a little more. You build walls around yourself to keep the scary feelings out, but those same walls keep you trapped inside. What the market wizards know. I've had the privilege of spending time with some of the most successful traders in the world, and here's what I've noticed about them. They're not fearless. They feel fear just like everyone else. What's different is that they've learned to feel fear without letting it control their behavior. They've developed the capacity to experience discomfort and act anyway. One trader I know, Michael Marcus, widely considered one of the greatest commodity traders ever, once took a sedative to dull the agony of missing a trade. He was so distressed by not being in a profitable move that he had to drug himself to cope. But he learned from that experience. He learned that he needed to develop emotional resilience, not avoid emotions. Another trader, Bill Dunn, runs a completely systematic trading program. He doesn't make discretionary decisions, but even he has to deal with emotions. When trades go against him, when clients call wanting answers, when the system is in a drawdown, he feels all of it. The difference is that he's developed the discipline to follow his system anyway. Here's the insight that changed everything for me. You cannot annul your emotions through a system. No trading system, no technique, no methodology will make your feelings go away. The only path is to learn to feel your feelings without being controlled by them. This is where meditation, yoga, journaling, and other inner work come in. They're not just nice spiritual practices, they're training for life. They teach you to sit with discomfort, to observe your thoughts and feelings without being swept away by them, to find the space between stimulus and response. Key takeaway: you have an emotional operating system that determines your behavior. The feelings you're avoiding control you more than the ones you're seeking. The path to freedom is learning to feel everything without being controlled by anything. Reflection prompt: what feelings are you currently organizing your life around avoiding? What would you do differently if you were willing to feel rejection, failure, or uncertainty? Chapter 4. Surrender. The Master Skill. Chapter Summary. Surrender isn't weakness. It's the recognition that you cannot control outcomes, only your response to them. Learning to surrender to market movements, to rejection, to uncertainty, is the foundation of emotional freedom. We'll explore what real surrender looks like and how to develop it. The illusion of control. Let me tell you about a trade that taught me more than any winning trade ever could. It was the early 1990s, and I was trading wheat. A massive heat wave was sitting on top of the Great Plains, and the crop was getting destroyed. I was long wheat and making money every day. Life was good. We were coming into the last trading day before the July 4th weekend. I was sure, absolutely sure, that the contract was going to sell off. Everyone who was long would take their profits and go home flat. The selling would cascade. I figured I could make a quick profit by going short in the last few minutes of trading. So I called my floor trader and sold 50,000 bushels of July wheat. But the selling didn't come. At least, not in the contract I was watching. What I didn't notice was that the floor traders were selling the December contract, a deferred month, to hedge their July positions. I was so focused on my plan that I completely missed what was actually happening. With 6 minutes left in the day, I called my client and said, "Nothing's doing. Let's get out." He agreed. I got my trader on the phone and said, "Sell 50 July market." He screamed back, "Sold." And then I realized what I'd done. I hadn't covered my short position. I'd doubled down. Now I was short 100,000 bushels of July wheat with 5 minutes until the close. The comedy of errors that followed, sprinting to the operations desk, tackling a man by the front door, pounding on bulletproof glass while the operations clerk finished a personal phone call, is a story for another time. The lesson is what matters. I had been so confident in my prediction that I'd stopped paying attention. I'd confused my mental model of the market with the market itself, and the market, as it always does, did whatever it wanted. That trade cost me about $1,200 in the end. Cheap tuition, all things considered. But what I learned was priceless. You have zero control over what the market does. The only thing you control is your response. What surrender really means, when I say surrender, I don't mean giving up. I don't mean becoming passive. I don't mean letting life happen to you. What I mean is surrendering the illusion of control. Recognizing that you cannot predict the future, cannot control outcomes, and cannot avoid uncertainty. Surrender means accepting that you will be wrong more often than you're right, and being okay with that. It means knowing where your stop is before you enter the trade, and accepting the loss if it comes. It means not becoming emotionally invested in the outcome of any single trade, or any single interaction, or any single day. The most successful traders I know have this quality. They don't argue with the market. They don't get angry at the market. They don't try to prove the market wrong. They just ask, what is the market telling me right now? If the market says they're wrong, they get out. No drama, no ego, just action. This is surrender. It's the recognition that the market, or reality, or other people, doesn't owe you anything. The market doesn't care about your analysis, your degree, your track record, or your feelings. It just is what it is. Your job is to respond to what is, not what you wish it were. The emotional math of letting go. Let me make this more concrete with what I call the emotional math of surrender. Imagine a trade is going against you. You have two choices. Choice A, take the loss now. Feel the frustration of being wrong. Move on with your equity intact and your head clear for the next opportunity. Choice B, hold on and hope it comes back. Avoid the immediate pain of admitting you were wrong. Risk a much larger loss. Spend hours or days worrying about the position. Have your mental energy consumed by a losing trade. The emotional equation for choice A is feeling of a small loss plus frustrations, the ability to move on. The emotional equation for choice B is temporary avoidance of pain plus prolonged anxiety plus potential catastrophic loss plus feeling like an idiot later. Which equation leads to a better life? Which equation leads to a better trading record? The answer is obvious intellectually. But executing choice A requires something that most people never develop, the willingness to feel frustration now rather than despondency later. This is what surrender gives you. It gives you the ability to say, yes, this hurts. Yes, I was wrong, and I'm going to take the loss now, because I know that's what professional traders do. I'm going to protect my capital and my peace of mind. 1 foot on the floor. Years ago, I was in a trading situation that had me so anxious I couldn't sleep without 1 foot on the floor. I was afraid of what might happen overnight. I was afraid of the position I was carrying. That's not surrender. That's fear. When you've truly surrendered, you can sleep peacefully with both feet in the bed. Not because you're sure you're right, you're never sure, but because you know your risk is defined. You know your stop is in place. You know that whatever happens, you've done what you can do. The rest is out of your hands. This applies to everything. When you approach a woman, the outcome isn't in your control. She might be interested, she might not. She might be available or not. She might be in a good mood, she might not. The surrendered man doesn't need her to like him. He's already okay with himself. He approaches because he wants to, not because he needs validation. And if she's not interested, that's fine. It's not a judgment on his worth. It's just information. When you speak up in a meeting, you can't control how others respond. The surrendered man speaks his truth because it's his truth, not because he needs approval. And if others disagree, that's fine. Their disagreement doesn't diminish him. Surrender is the foundation of true confidence, because when you're not attached to outcomes, you're free to act authentically. How to develop surrender? Surrender isn't something you just decide to do. It's a capacity you develop over time, usually through experiences that teach you the limits of your control. You can accelerate this development through practices that quiet your mind and teach you to observe your thoughts without being swept away by them. Meditation is one such practice. When you sit quietly and watch your breath, you learn that thoughts arise and pass away. Feelings come and go. You don't have to grab onto every thought and ride it like a wild horse. You can let them pass. Yoga is another. When you're holding a challenging pose and your instructor tells you to relax into it, to breathe and just be there, that's surrender training. You're learning to be comfortable in discomfort. Keeping a journal is another. When you write down your thoughts and feelings each day, you create distance from them. You become an observer of your own mind rather than a prisoner of it. But the most powerful teacher of surrender is experience. Every time you take a loss and the world doesn't end, every time you get rejected and your worth doesn't change, every time something goes wrong and you survive. Each of these experiences teaches you, you can handle this. You're stronger than you think. Key takeaway, surrender is the recognition that you cannot control outcomes, only your response to them. It's the ability to take losses, face rejections, and accept uncertainty without losing your center. This is not weakness, it's the foundation of authentic power. Reflection prompt. Where in your life are you still fighting for control? What would surrendering look like in that situation? What are you afraid would happen if you let go? Previously in this book, we've explored the two systems running your mind, the emotional system 1 and the rational system 2. We've seen how the education system trains us for accuracy, while life rewards emotional discipline. We've identified our emotional operating systems, the feelings we seek and the feelings we avoid, and we've begun to understand surrender as the master skill that underlies all others. Now we're going to take these concepts and apply them to specific domains: trading, relationships, and personal power. What you'll discover is that the same psychological principles operate everywhere, and that developing your inner game is the single most important investment you can make. Part 2. The inner game of trading, what the market wizards know that the rest of us don't. Chapter 5. The abundance of losses. Chapter summary. Professional traders lose more often than they win, and they're fine with this. Why? Because they understand that trading is a game of mathematical expectation, not accuracy. We'll explore why cutting losses is the single most important skill in trading, why it's so emotionally difficult, and how to develop the capacity to take small losses consistently, the truth about stock returns. Before we dive into the psychology of losses, I want to share some data that shocked me when I first saw it. It might shock you too. A comprehensive study of 8,000 stocks from 1983 to 2007 found that 39% of stocks had a negative lifetime total return. 2 out of 5 went bust. 18.5% of stocks lost at least 75% of their value. 1 out of 5 was catastrophic. 64% of stocks underperformed the Russell 3000 index during their lifetime. The median compounded annual return was just 5.1%. And here's the kicker. 75%, 75% of stocks, 6,000 out of 8,000, had a total return of 0% over their entire lifetime. Think about that. 3 out of 4 stocks went nowhere or lost money. Yet the entire mutual fund industry is built on the premise of buying and holding stocks for the long term. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't invest in stocks. What I'm saying is that the buy and hold strategy that most people follow is emotionally bankrupt. It requires you to sit through massive drawdowns without any plan for protecting your capital. It asks you to hold on during crashes and hope things come back. Professional traders don't operate this way. They take losses. They cut positions that aren't working. They preserve capital so they can fight another day. The data tells a clear story. Most stocks lose money over their lifetime. Your job isn't to find the winners, it's to avoid the big losers. And the only way to do that is to take small losses consistently. The mathematics of cutting losses. Let's return to our earlier example and make it more concrete. Imagine 2 portfolios. Both start with 100,000, both invest in 5 positions, equal weight at. Both invest in 5 positions, equal weight at 20,000 each. After 2 months, here's where they stand. Portfolio A, buy and hold. Position 1, plus 25%, plus 25%, plus 5,005. Position 2, plus 10%, plus 2,002. Position 3, flat. Position 4, minus 10%, minus to 2,000. Position 5, minus 25%, minus 5,005. Net result after 2 months, 0, profit. All that work for nothing. Portfolio B, active risk management. Position 1, 25%, plus 25%, plus 5,000. Position 2, plus 10%, plus 2,000. Position 3, flat, sold because it went nowhere. Position 4, minus 10%, and minus 2,000, sold when it hit this level. Position 5, minus 10%, minus 2,000, sold when it hit this level. Net result, plus 3,000 profit. Modest, but positive. And 40% of the portfolio is now in cash, ready to deploy into better opportunities. The difference between these 2 outcomes is entirely about risk management. It's about the willingness to take small losses before they become big ones. Now, I know what the little voice in your head is saying, but what if I sell at minus 10% and it comes back? Then I'll feel stupid. Let's examine that feeling. You'd rather risk a 50% loss, from which you may never recover, than feel the temporary frustration of being wrong about a minus 10% cut. Big losers were always small losers first. You have to be down 2%, before you're down 5%, before you're down 10%, before you're down 50%. At every point along that path, you had the choice to get out. Cut your losers at the knees before they cut your throat. The feelings that keep you in bad trades. So why is this so hard to do? Why do intelligent, educated people hold on to losing positions until they're catastrophic? It comes back to the feelings. Taking a loss means admitting you were wrong. For someone who's built their identity on being smart, this is excruciating. It's not just a financial loss, it's an identity loss. Taking a loss also means giving up hope. As long as you're still in the position, there's always the chance it could come back. You can tell yourself stories about how the market is irrational, how your analysis was right, how the fundamentals haven't changed. Hope is a very seductive feeling. But hope is not a strategy. The market doesn't care about your hope. The price is the price, and the price tells you everything you need to know. If you bought something at 50 and it's now at 45, the market is telling you something. Maybe you were wrong about the timing. Maybe you were wrong about the value. Maybe something has changed that you don't know about yet. It doesn't matter. What matters is what you do next. The professional trader asks, does this position still make sense at this price? If the answer is no, or even I'm not sure, he gets out. He can always get back in later. The amateur asks, how can I avoid feeling stupid? And he holds on, hoping to be vindicated. The abundance mindset. Here's a reframe that changed everything for me. Instead of viewing losses as failures, what if you viewed them as the cost of doing business? What if losses were not just acceptable but essential? Think about it. You can't have winners without having losers. Every great trade started as a small position that could have gone wrong. The trader who never takes a loss is the trader who never takes a risk. I call this the abundance of losses. It's the recognition that taking small losses is how you create space for big winners. Each loss is an investment in your process. Each loss teaches you something. Each loss is proof that you're in the game, taking shots, doing the work. When you internalize this, the emotional sting of losses diminishes. They become data points, not identity threats. They become part of your process, not judgments on your worth. One of the most successful traders I know told me that his best trade was a losing one, because he followed his rules perfectly. The market just didn't cooperate. He felt no regret, no shame, no need to rationalize. He just took the loss and moved on. That's the abundance mindset. That's where you want to be. Key takeaway. The willingness to take consistent small losses is the single most important skill in trading and in life. Losses are not failures, they're the cost of being in the game. The only real failure is letting a small loss become a catastrophic one. Reflection prompt. Think about a situation in your life where you're currently holding on to something that's not working, a project, a relationship, a belief. What would it feel like to cut that loss? What are you afraid would happen if you did? Chapter 6. You are the black box. Chapter summary. Many traders believe that having a systematic trading model will eliminate their emotional struggles. This is a dangerous myth. The trader is always part of the system, and unless you understand your own psychology, no system will work consistently for you. We'll explore why most traders fail despite knowing what to do and how to become compatible with your own methodology. The myth of the emotion-free system. I can't tell you how many times I've heard this from new traders. Once I get my system fully automated, I won't have to worry about emotions anymore. The computer will do all the thinking and I'll just execute. This sounds reasonable on the surface. If emotions are the problem and computers don't have emotions, then automating your trading should eliminate the problem. But there's a flaw in this logic. A big one. The trader is part of the system. Even if your computer generates perfectly objective signals, a human being still has to enter the orders. A human being still has to resist the urge to override the system when it's in a drawdown. A human being still has to execute during periods of high volatility. A human being still has to explain to clients why they're losing money. And when that human being is being emotionally battered by a losing streak, guess what happens? The urge to intervene becomes overwhelming. Maybe I'll just skip this trade. Maybe I'll reduce my position size just for this one. Maybe the system is broken and I need to tweak it. Every one of these interventions is an emotional decision, not a rational one. And every one of them destroys the integrity of the system. I know a trader who had a perfectly good system. He'd back-tested it thoroughly. He knew it worked over the long term. But when he started trading it with real money, he couldn't stick to it. He'd skip trades after a losing streak. He'd override signals that didn't feel right. He'd take profits early because he was afraid of giving them back. The system wasn't the problem. He was the problem. He was the black box in his own trading. The trader who couldn't pull the trigger. One of my mentors told me about a trainee who had everything going for him. He was smart, educated, motivated. He understood the system intellectually. He'd done all the back testing. He had capital to trade. But he couldn't pull the trigger. When it came time to place a trade, he'd freeze. He'd think of all the reasons it might not work. He'd analyze the setup from every angle. He'd look for more confirmation, more data, more assurance that this trade would be a winner. My mentor described his process as ready, aim, aim, aim. He never fired. What was happening here? He was afraid of being wrong. He couldn't tolerate the uncertainty of putting on a trade and not knowing how it would turn out. So he stayed in analysis mode, where he could feel smart and in control, but never actually had to face the possibility of loss. This is a System 2 problem masquerading as a System 1 problem. He was using analysis to avoid feeling. He was hiding in his intellect because his emotions were too scary to face. The solution wasn't more analysis. It wasn't a better system. It was learning to tolerate uncertainty. It was learning that being wrong wasn't fatal. It was developing the emotional capacity to act despite not knowing the outcome. Compatibility, the missing piece. Here's the key insight that most trading education misses entirely. The goal isn't to find the best trading system. The goal is to find the system that's most compatible with who you are emotionally. I know traders who thrive on high-frequency, high-stress day trading. They love the action. They love being in and out of positions quickly. The constant stimulation energizes them. I also know traders who can't stand that style. They need time to analyze, to think, to let positions develop. They trade on weekly or monthly timeframes and check their positions once a day. Neither style is better. But if the high-energy trader tried to trade like the patient one, he'd go crazy with boredom. And if the patient trader tried to day trade, he'd burn out in a week. The same is true of the vehicles you trade. Some traders love the leverage and excitement of commodities futures. Others prefer the relative stability of stocks. Still others are drawn to forex or options. What attracts you to a particular market or style isn't just the potential for profit. It's the emotional experience that market provides. It's the feelings you get from trading it. If you're compatible with your methodology, if the emotional experience matches what you're seeking, then following your rules will feel natural. Not easy, necessarily, but natural. Following your rules will feel like being yourself. If you're incompatible, if the emotional experience is one you're trying to avoid, then following your rules will feel like torture. You'll constantly be fighting yourself, and eventually, you'll lose that fight. How to find your compatibility. So how do you determine which style fits you? Here's a framework I use with my students. Start by asking yourself these questions. 1. What feelings do I enjoy experiencing when I trade? Excitement? Calm? The thrill of being right? The satisfaction of patience paying off? 2. What feelings am I trying to avoid? Boredom, anxiety, the shame of being wrong, the stress of constant monitoring? 3. How much time do I want to spend on trading each day? Some people want to be glued to screens. Others want to check in once a day or once a week. 4. How do I handle drawdowns emotionally? Can I tolerate being in a losing position for weeks? Or do I need quick resolution? 5. What's my natural energy level? Am I high energy and need constant action? Or am I more contemplative and need time to process? Your answers to these questions will point you towards certain styles and away from others. A low-energy person who hates stress shouldn't be day trading forex with 200-to-1 leverage. A high-energy person who craves action shouldn't be running a long-term trend-following system. The key is honesty. You have to be honest about who you are, not who you wish you were. You have to accept your emotional makeup rather than fighting it. The greatest trader's secret. When you study the great traders, the ones who've been profitable for decades, you notice something interesting. They all have a spiritual practice of some kind. Bill Dunn, who runs a purely systematic program, has a PhD in theoretical physics. He approaches trading like a scientist. His discipline comes from trusting the math over his emotions. Michael Marcus used meditation and therapy to work through his emotional issues. He recognized that his trading problems were really personal problems manifesting in the market. Mike Bellafiore runs the Big Loop in Central Park at 5 a.m. No headphones, just him, his breath, and his thoughts. Steve Spencer has been doing yoga for years. It helps him stay centered during the chaos of the trading day. Ed Seykota, who mentored many of the great traders, runs trading tribes, groups where people work on their emotional issues together. What do all these practices have in common? They quiet the mind. They develop self-awareness. They teach you to observe your thoughts and feelings without being controlled by them. They help you hear your inner voice. This isn't a coincidence. Trading is 80% psychological and 20% technical. Your ability to execute under pressure, to take losses, to let winners run, to stick to your system during drawdowns depends entirely on your psychological fitness. And psychological fitness, like physical fitness, requires regular training. Key takeaway: you can't eliminate emotions from trading through systems or automation. You are part of the system. The key is to find a methodology that's compatible with your emotional makeup and to do the inner work that allows you to execute consistently. Reflection prompt. If you had to describe your ideal emotional state while trading or working or interacting with others, what would it be? What practices could you incorporate into your daily routine to cultivate that state? Chapter 7. The 2 most important decisions. Chapter summary. Before you enter any trade, you must know 2 things: when you'll get out if you're right, and when you'll get out if you're wrong. This chapter explores why defining your exit before you enter is crucial for both financial and emotional success, and what happens when you skip this step. The big money is made in the sitting. The legendary trader Jesse Livermore once said that the big money is made not in the buying or the selling, but in the sitting. What he meant was that the hardest part of trading and the most profitable is doing nothing. Sitting with a winning position while it compounds. Not getting scared out, not taking profits too early, just waiting. But here's what he didn't say explicitly. The sitting is only possible if you've already decided your exit. Before you enter the trade, you know at what price you'll take profits, and at what price you'll take a loss. Once those decisions are made, the sitting becomes mechanical. You've already done the thinking. Now you just execute the plan. Without those pre-made decisions, the sitting becomes torture. Every price fluctuation makes you question yourself. Should I take profits now? What if it goes lower? Maybe I should add to my position. Maybe I should get out. These are not rational questions. They're emotional reactions to price movements. And they will lead you to do exactly the wrong thing at exactly the wrong time. The Intel lesson. Let me tell you about a trade that taught me this lesson in the most painful way possible. It was the early 1990s, and Intel was about to announce earnings. I had a hunch, based on my research and the whispered number on the street, that the number would be positive. I also suspected that Intel might announce a stock split. I bought call options, the right to buy Intel at $70 per share, about 10 days before the announcement. I paid $150 per contract by the day before the announcement. Those calls were worth over per contract. By the day before the announcement, those calls were worth over $3.3 per contract. I was up 100% before the news even hit. When the earnings number came out, it was better than expected, and Intel announced a 2-for-1 stock split. I was ecstatic. I called all my friends and clients, telling them how much money we were going to make. But here's what I didn't do. I didn't have an exit plan. The next morning, the stock opened higher. And then the professionals who had been accumulating for months sold into that strength. They had an exit plan. They executed it. And I watched my 100% gain evaporate before my eyes. I still made money on that trade, but I left an enormous amount on the table. The difference between what I made and what I could have made was the tuition for a lesson I'll never forget. Always know your exit before you enter. The emotional exit. Most people think about exits purely in financial terms. I'll sell when I've made X%, or I'll cut my loss at Y%. But exits are also emotional decisions. Actually, they're emotional decisions first, financial decisions second. When you define your exit before you enter, you're making a contract with yourself. You're saying, if the price reaches this level, I will take this action, regardless of how I feel in the moment. This is crucial because in the moment, you won't be thinking clearly. If the trade is going against you, you'll be feeling fear and hope. Fear of losing more, hope that it will come back. If the trade is going in your favor, you'll be feeling greed and fear. Greed for more profits, fear of giving back what you have. These emotions will sabotage you every time. Unless you've already made the decision. Unless you have a pre-existing contract with yourself that you're committed to honoring. This is why I tell my students, the stop is placed at the price where you're willing to transfer the risk to someone else. It's not about the money. It's about the willingness. It's about the emotional commitment to act. The time stop. There's another kind of exit that most traders never think about. The time stop. Here's the logic. When you enter a trade, one of 3 things can happen. The price can go up, down, or sideways. In 2 of those 3 scenarios, you're wrong. If the price goes sideways for an extended period, your capital is tied up in a position that's not making money, and you're missing other opportunities. So I have a rule. If a position hasn't moved in my favor within a certain period, usually a few weeks, I get out. Not because I've lost money, but because I've lost time. And time is the one resource you can never get back. This is emotionally challenging for many traders. Selling a position that hasn't lost money feels like giving up. It feels like admitting that your analysis was wrong, not about direction, but about timing. But as I said earlier, being wrong is part of the game. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you can stop pretending that every trade has to work out. Key takeaway: define your exit before you enter. Know at what price you'll take profits and at what price you'll take losses. This pre-commitment protects you from the emotional decisions you'll be tempted to make in the heat of the moment. Reflection prompt. Think about a time when you held on to something, a project, a relationship, a belief, long past the point where you knew it wasn't working. What kept you from exiting? What would have been different if you'd had a predefined exit? Chapter 8. The Rogues Gallery. Chapter summary. Not everyone who calls themselves a trader actually trades. Some are gamblers, some are frauds, and some are simply in denial about what they're doing. In this chapter, we'll examine some of the most spectacular trading blow-ups in history and extract the emotional lessons they contain. The hero trade. Every few years, a story emerges of a trader who lost billions of dollars for their firm. The names become infamous. Nick Leeson, who brought down Barings Bank; Brian Hunter, who blew up Amaranth Advisors; Jerome Kerviel, who cost Societe Generale billions. On the surface, these traders seem different. They traded different markets, worked at different firms, and had different backgrounds. But underneath, they all made the same mistake. They all went for what I call the hero trade. The hero trade is when you bet so big that, if you're right, you'll be legendary. Your bonus will be enormous. Your reputation will be made. Everyone will know your name. But if you're wrong, you'll destroy everything. The hero trade is fundamentally an ego trade. It's not about making money. It's about proving something. It's about demonstrating that you're smarter than everyone else. It's about being right in a way that everyone can see. And it almost always ends in disaster. Why? Because the hero trade requires you to ignore risk. It requires you to bet more than you can afford to lose. It requires you to put your entire career, and often your entire firm, on the line for one trade. The professional trader never does this. No single trade should be able to destroy you, ever. The martingale madness. The technical term for what these rogue traders were doing, whether they knew it or not, is called a martingale system. Here's how it works. You make a bet. If you lose, you double your bet on the next trade. If you lose again, you double again. The theory is that eventually you'll win, and when you do, you'll recover all your losses plus a small profit. In theory, this works. In practice, it's catastrophic, because eventually you hit a losing streak long enough to exhaust your capital, or you hit position limits, or the market moves so far against you that no matter how much you add, you can't catch up. Nick Leeson was using a martingale system when he blew up Barings Bank. He kept doubling down on a losing position, convinced that the market would eventually turn. It didn't. And by the time it was over, he'd lost $1.4 billion and destroyed a 233-year-old institution. Brian Hunter was doing essentially the same thing at Amaranth. He kept adding to a losing natural gas spread position, convinced that the market would revert. It didn't. He lost $6.6 billion and took down the entire firm. The martingale system is emotionally seductive because it lets you avoid the pain of being wrong. Every time you add to a losing position, you're saying, "I'm not wrong. I just need more size to prove I'm right." You're deferring the emotional reckoning. But the reckoning always comes, and when it does, it's far worse than if you'd just taken the small loss in the first place, the gambler's mindset. Here's how you can tell the difference between a trader and a gambler. A trader is process-oriented. He follows his rules. He manages his risk. He knows that any individual trade is just one of thousands, and that the outcome of any single trade is largely random. A gambler is outcome-oriented. He's focused on this trade right now. He needs to win. He needs to prove something. The process doesn't matter, only the result. The gambler gets an emotional payoff from winning that the trader doesn't need. The gambler feels validated when he's right and devastated when he's wrong. His self-worth rides on every trade. The trader is detached from outcomes. He's committed to his process, not to being right. A winning trade doesn't make him a genius, and a losing trade doesn't make him a fool. The rogues were all gamblers, even if they called themselves traders. They were playing for emotional stakes, not financial ones. And when the losses started mounting, they couldn't handle the emotional pain of admitting they were wrong. So they doubled down, and doubled again, until there was nothing left. The lesson for you. You might think, well, I'll never manage billions of dollars, so this doesn't apply to me. But the same psychology operates at every scale. The guy who puts his entire savings into one stock and watches it go to zero is doing the same thing Brian Hunter did with billions. The guy who keeps adding to a losing position in his $10,000 account is running the same martingale system that destroyed Baring's bank. The scale is different, but the emotional dynamics are identical. The lesson is simple, though not easy. Never bet more than you can afford to lose. Never let a single trade define your career. And never, ever add to a losing position to avoid the pain of being wrong. Key takeaway: the rogue traders all made the same emotional mistakes. They couldn't admit being wrong, they doubled down to avoid pain, and they let ego override risk management. The solution is to detach from outcomes, follow your process, and keep losses small, always. Reflection prompt: have you ever doubled down on something that wasn't working? A project, a relationship, a belief? Because you couldn't admit you were wrong. What was the emotional payoff you were seeking? What would have happened if you'd cut your losses earlier? Previously in this book, we've explored the psychological foundations of trading, the importance of keeping losses small, the myth of emotion, free systems, the critical nature of predefined exits, and the cautionary tales of those who let ego override risk management. Now we're going to shift gears and explore how these same principles apply to an area that, on the surface, seems completely different: attraction and relationships. Part 3. The Inner Game of Attraction. Why Being Present Matters More Than Any Technique. Chapter 9. The Lion Among Sheep. Chapter summary. In a world where most people are desperately seeking approval, the person who doesn't need it stands out immediately. This chapter explores what it means to be genuinely confident, not arrogant, not cocky, but authentically self-possessed. We'll learn why being yourself is terrible advice if your self isn't solid, and how to become the kind of person others naturally gravitate toward. The two kinds of confidence. Let me tell you about two guys I knew in college. The first guy, let's call him Mark, was always the loudest person in the room. He'd walk into a party and immediately start working the crowd. He had a line for every situation, a story for every occasion. He seemed incredibly confident. Women flocked to him at first, but if you watched Mark closely, you'd notice something. His confidence was fragile. When a woman rejected him, he'd get angry or defensive. When someone challenged him, he'd escalate. His whole persona depended on being the center of attention, and if he lost that attention, he fell apart. The second guy, let's call him James, was quieter. He didn't command attention when he walked into a room, but people noticed him anyway. There was something about the way he carried himself. He seemed comfortable in his own skin. He didn't need to be the center of attention, but when he spoke, people listened. Women were drawn to James in a different way. They weren't initially dazzled by him, but they'd find themselves wanting to be near him. They'd ask their friends about him. They'd find excuses to talk to him. What was the difference between these two guys? Mark had what I call performed confidence. It was an act. It was designed to impress others and extract validation from them. It worked in the short term, but it was exhausting to maintain and collapsed under pressure. James had what I call authentic confidence. It wasn't an act. It was the natural expression of someone who was okay with himself. He didn't need validation from others, so he wasn't desperate for it, and his lack of desperation was magnetic. The difference between these two types of confidence is the difference between building a house on sand and building a house on rock. When the storms come, and they always come, only one stands firm: the scarcity trap. Most people operate from what I call the scarcity mindset. They believe that there's not enough to go around, not enough love, not enough attention, not enough success. So they have to grab what they can, when they can, before someone else takes it. This mindset creates desperation, and desperation is repellent. When you're desperate for a woman's approval, she can smell it. It comes through in your body language, the way you lean in too eagerly, the way your eyes search for validation, the way your voice rises in pitch. It comes through in your words, the compliments that seem designed to extract a response, the jokes that land flat because they're trying too hard. And she's not attracted to desperation. She's repelled by it. Why? Because desperation signals low value. If you're desperate for her attention, it must mean you don't get attention from many women. And if you don't get attention from many women, there must be a reason. Her subconscious mind does this calculation instantly and concludes, this guy is not a catch. The scarcity mindset also makes you clingy. When you believe she's the only one, or the best one you can get, you hold on too tight. You text too often. You get jealous, you need constant reassurance, and all of this pushes her away. The solution is to develop what I call the abundance mindset. This doesn't mean pretending there are infinite beautiful women who want you. It means genuinely believing that you'll be fine, regardless of what happens with any particular woman. It means knowing that rejection is not fatal. It means being willing to walk away. This is exactly the same as the abundance of losses in trading. The trader who's desperate to avoid losses will hold on to losing positions until they destroy him. The trader who accepts losses as part of the process can cut them quickly and move on. The man who's desperate for a woman's approval will cling and grovel until he drives her away. The man who's okay with rejection can be authentic and let the chips fall where they may. Same psychology, different domain. The dominance frame. Now I want to talk about something that might make you uncomfortable. But stick with me, because it's important. There's a concept I call the I am dominant frame. It's not about being domineering or aggressive. It's about being so solid in yourself that your reality is stronger than other people's realities. Here's what I mean. Most people walk around with weak frames. Their sense of self is fragile. When they interact with someone who has a stronger frame, they unconsciously adopt that person's reality. They defer. They seek approval. They change their opinions to match. The person with the strongest frame in any interaction effectively defines reality for everyone else in that interaction. This is why confident people seem to control the room. They're not doing anything overtly controlling. They just have a stronger sense of self than everyone else. Women are particularly attuned to this. They're constantly testing men's frames, not consciously but instinctively. They'll say something provocative or act cold or create drama and then watch how the man responds. If he gets defensive or apologizes or tries to please her, his frame breaks. He's shown that her reality is stronger than his. He's shown that he needs her approval more than she needs his. If he stays calm, or laughs it off, or simply doesn't react, his frame holds. He's shown that his reality is solid. He's shown that her opinion doesn't define him. And here's the counterintuitive part. Women are attracted to men whose frames they can't break. They want to be with someone stronger than them, not physically, but psychologically, someone who won't crumble when they test him, someone who can hold his own reality even when she's challenging it. This isn't about being an asshole, it's about being solid. It's about knowing who you are and not letting anyone else define that for you. The unreactive man. Let me give you an example of what this looks like in practice. Imagine you're on a date and the woman says something designed to provoke you. Maybe she mentions that her ex-boyfriend was really good at something. Maybe she makes a critical comment about your clothes. Maybe she says she's not sure about you. The reactive man gets defensive. He tries to prove himself. He argues. He brags. He shows that her comment got under his skin. And in doing so, he hands her all the power. The unreactive man doesn't take the bait. He might smile and say nothing. He might make a joke. He might acknowledge what she said without being affected by it. His frame remains intact. He's shown that her tests don't faze him. Who do you think she's more attracted to? The same principle applies in trading. When the market moves against you, the unreactive trader doesn't panic. He doesn't argue with the market. He doesn't try to prove the market wrong. He just follows his plan. His frame, his commitment to his process, remains intact. Being unreactive is one of the most attractive qualities you can develop. It signals strength. It signals self-possession. It signals that you're not dependent on anyone else for your emotional state. Key takeaway: authentic confidence is not about performing for others. It's about being solid in yourself. When you don't need approval, you become magnetic. When your frame is stronger than others, they naturally defer to you. This isn't manipulation. It's the natural result of being genuinely okay with yourself. Reflection prompt. Think about someone in your life who genuinely doesn't seem to care what others think of them. How do people respond to that person? What would change in your life if you needed 10% less approval from others? Chapter 10. The Social Resume Chapter Summary. People make snap judgments about you based on limited information. In this chapter, we'll explore how to build what I call your social resume, the image and reputation that precedes you and opens doors before you even walk through them. This isn't about being fake. It's about strategically presenting the best version of yourself. The 10 second impression research shows that people form lasting impressions of you within the first few seconds of meeting you. Before you've said a word, they've already made judgments about your status, your confidence, your likability, and your attractiveness. This might seem unfair, but it's reality, and once you understand it, you can work with it rather than against it. Think about the last time you walked into a room full of strangers. Before you opened your mouth, what were you communicating? Your posture, your walk, your eye contact, your facial expression, your clothing, your grooming. All of these things were sending signals, and people were reading those signals and forming impressions. The question is, were those impressions working for you or against you? I learned this lesson the hard way. When I first started out, I'd walk into trading floors or social events with slumped shoulders, avoiding eye contact, looking uncomfortable. I was sending signals that said low status, nervous, not confident, and people treated me accordingly. When I started paying attention to my body language, standing up straight, making eye contact, moving slowly and deliberately, everything changed. People treated me differently before I'd even spoken a word. This isn't about being fake. It's about aligning your external presentation with the person you want to be. And here's the interesting part. When you change your external presentation, your internal state often follows. Stand like a confident person long enough, and you'll start to feel more confident. The authority principle. There's a well-documented psychological phenomenon called the authority principle. It states that people naturally defer to those they perceive as having higher status or expertise. Think about how you respond to a doctor in a white coat, or a police officer in uniform, or a well-dressed executive in a boardroom. You unconsciously give them more credibility, more respect, more deference than you'd give a random person on the street. The same principle operates in social situations. When you present yourself with authority through your appearance, your body language, your confidence, people unconsciously assume you have higher status. They treat you better. They're more interested in what you have to say. They're more likely to follow your lead. This is why image matters. Not because you're shallow, but because image is a shortcut that people use to determine status. And status determines how people treat you. The good news is that authority can be cultivated. You don't need to be born with it. You can develop it through conscious effort. The elements of presence. Let me give you some specific actionable ways to build your presence. Dress intentionally. You don't need to spend a fortune on clothes, but you do need to pay attention to what you're wearing. Study what successful people in your field wear. Develop a style that's appropriate for your context and that makes you feel confident. Move slowly. Nervous people move quickly and jerkily. Confident people move slowly and deliberately. Practice slowing down your movements, your walk, your gestures, the way you turn your head. It will feel unnatural at first, but it will signal confidence to others. Take up space. Low, status people make themselves small. High, status people expand. Stand with your feet shoulder width apart. Don't cross your arms protectively over your chest. Let your arms rest comfortably at your sides or on the back of a chair. Occupy the space you're in. Make eye contact. This is one of the most powerful signals you can send. When you meet someone, look them in the eye. When you're speaking, maintain eye contact for about 70% of the time. When they're speaking, maintain it about 50% of the time. This signals confidence and engagement. Smile genuinely. A fake smile is worse than no smile. But a genuine smile, one that reaches your eyes, is disarming and attractive. It signals that you're comfortable and pleased to be where you are. Be comfortable with silence. Nervous people fill every silence with chatter. Confident people are comfortable with pauses. When you're not afraid of silence, you signal that you're in control of the conversation. The social proof loop. Here's something fascinating about social dynamics. When people see that others respect you, they respect you more. When people see that others are attracted to you, they become more attracted to you. When people see that you're in demand, they want you more. This is called social proof, and it creates a virtuous cycle. The more social proof you have, the more social proof you generate. This is why it's worth investing in your social resume, the experiences, associations, and accomplishments that signal your status to others. When you can casually mention that you were at an exclusive event, or that you know someone impressive, or that you've done something interesting, your social proof increases. But here's the key. Social proof has to be authentic. It has to come from genuinely doing interesting things, knowing interesting people, and being an interesting person. You can't fake it for long. This brings us back to a fundamental principle. Become the kind of person who naturally attracts others. Don't focus on techniques to manipulate people into liking you. Focus on becoming someone worth liking. Build a life that's interesting. Develop skills that are impressive. Cultivate relationships with other high-value people. Do things worth talking about. When you do this, social proof takes care of itself. Key takeaway: people form impressions of you within seconds, and those impressions are heavily influenced by your presentation. By consciously developing your presence through body language, appearance, and demeanor, you can signal high status and confidence. But authenticity is essential. The goal is to become the kind of person who naturally commands respect, not to fake it. Reflection prompt. If you could wave a magic wand and change how others perceive you, what would you change? What's one thing you could do this week to start moving toward that perception authentically? Chapter 11. The Art of Not Caring. Chapter summary. Desperation is the ultimate attraction killer. In this chapter, we'll explore why learning to genuinely not need approval from others, especially from women you're attracted to, is the most powerful thing you can do for your love life and your life in general. The paradox of desire. Here's a paradox that took me years to understand. The more you want someone to like you, the less likely they are to like you. The more you need a particular outcome, the less likely you are to achieve it. The more you cling to something, the more it slips through your fingers. Why is this? Because wanting something too much creates tension. It creates an agenda. It makes you behave in ways that are subtly off-putting. You try too hard. You're too eager. You're too available. You lean in when you should lean back. And people can sense this. They can feel your need. And neediness is universally unattractive. This is true in dating, in business, in friendship, in every area of human interaction. The person who needs the deal to close is the person who loses negotiating power. The person who needs to be liked is the person who gets walked over. The person who needs the relationship to work is the person who gets taken for granted. The solution is to genuinely stop needing outcomes, to be okay regardless of what happens, to know that your worth isn't determined by whether this person likes you or this deal closes or this opportunity works out. The walk-away power. There's a concept in negotiation theory called BATNA, best alternative to a negotiated agreement. It's your fallback option. It's what you'll do if the deal doesn't work out. The party with the stronger BATNA has more power. If you're negotiating to buy a car and you have 3 other dealerships offering similar deals, you can walk away from any one of them. The salesperson knows this, so they work harder to earn your business. The same principle applies in relationships. If you have options, or more importantly, if you're okay being alone, you have walk-away power. You don't need any particular person to like you. You're fine either way. And counterintuitively, this makes people more attracted to you. Because When you're not desperate for their approval, you're more authentic. You're more relaxed. You're more fun to be around. You're not putting pressure on them to validate you. This is why the most attractive quality you can have is genuine indifference to outcomes, not in a cold or dismissive way, but in a way that says, I'd like to get to know you, but if it doesn't work out, I'll be fine. The tests women give women instinctively test men for this quality. They want to know, does he need my approval, or is he solid on his own? The tests come in many forms. She might mention another guy. She might cancel plans at the last minute. She might act cold or distant. She might criticize something about you. These aren't necessarily conscious tests. Often, she doesn't even know she's doing it. But she's watching your reaction. She's gathering data about your frame. If you get jealous or needy or defensive, you've failed the test. You've shown that your emotional state depends on her behavior. You've shown that she has power over you. If you stay calm, if you genuinely don't react, you've passed. You've shown that you're solid. You've shown that her behavior doesn't define your emotional state. This is exactly the same as the trading principle we discussed earlier. When the market moves against you, do you panic? Do you argue? Do you hope? Or do you calmly execute your plan? The unreactive trader keeps his losses small. The unreactive man keeps his frame intact. The nice guy trap. I want to address something that many nice guys struggle with. You've probably been told your whole life that the way to get a woman is to be nice to her, buy her things, compliment her, be available whenever she needs you, put her needs above your own. And yet, you've probably noticed that this doesn't work. The women you're nicest to are often the ones who lose interest fastest. Meanwhile, the guys who don't seem to care, the bad boys, have women chasing them. What's going on? The nice guy isn't actually being nice. He's being transactional. His niceness comes with strings attached. He's being nice because he wants something in return, her approval, her affection, her body. And she can sense this. The nice guy is also signaling low value. By being overly accommodating, he's showing that he doesn't have options. He's showing that he's willing to subordinate his needs to hers. He's showing that he's desperate for her approval. And remember, desperation is repulsive. The solution isn't to become a jerk. It's to become a man who genuinely doesn't need anything from her. A man who's nice because that's who he is, not because he's trying to get something. A man who has boundaries and standards and isn't afraid to enforce them. This kind of man doesn't apologize for his desires. He doesn't seek permission. He doesn't need validation. He knows what he wants and goes after it unapologetically. And women find this incredibly attractive. The apology epidemic. One of the most common manifestations of the nice guy syndrome is excessive apologizing. Men apologize for everything. They apologize for approaching a woman. They apologize for having an opinion. They apologize for taking up space. They apologize for existing. Every unnecessary apology is a signal of low status. It says, I'm not comfortable taking what I want. I need your permission to exist. I'm sorry for being a man. Stop it. Stop apologizing for things that don't require an apology. Stop saying sorry as a verbal tick. Stop seeking forgiveness for being yourself. If you've done something genuinely wrong, by all means apologize. But if you're apologizing because you're uncomfortable or because you're trying to preempt disapproval, catch yourself. Break the habit. The same goes for seeking permission. You don't need anyone's permission to live your life. You don't need permission to approach someone. You don't need permission to state your opinion. You don't need permission to pursue what you want. Asking for permission puts the other person in a position of authority over you. It's a submissive gesture, and submissive gestures are attractive to exactly no one. Key takeaway: the most attractive quality you can have is genuine indifference to outcomes. When you don't need someone's approval, they're more likely to give it. Stop apologizing, stop seeking permission, and stop making your emotional state dependent on how others respond to you. Reflection prompt. When was the last time you apologized for something that didn't warrant an apology? What were you really trying to accomplish with that apology? How would it feel to simply not apologize? Previously in this book, we've explored the psychology of confidence, the importance of authentic self-possession, and why not caring about outcomes is paradoxically the best way to achieve them. Now we're going to delve into what it means to be a strong person in a world that often seems designed to weaken you. Part 4. The Inner Game of Power. Becoming strong in a world that wants you weak. Chapter 12. The World is Not Your Friend. Chapter Summary. We live in a world that often seems designed to weaken people, especially men. From the education system to the media to corporate culture, there are forces that want you docile, compliant, and easy to control. This chapter explores how to recognize these forces and resist them, developing genuine strength rather than performing a socially acceptable version of it. The taming of the modern man. There was a time, not so long ago, when men were expected to be strong, not just physically, though that mattered, but psychologically. Men were expected to be resilient, to handle hardship without complaint, to protect and provide, to lead. These expectations weren't always fair, and they certainly weren't always healthy, but they were clear. A man knew what was expected of him. Today, the messages are different. Men are told that their masculinity is toxic, that strength is threatening, that assertiveness is aggression, that traditional male virtues are outdated at best and dangerous at worst. The result is a generation of men who are lost. They've been raised to be nice, accommodating, non-threatening, emotionally available, and then they're shocked when women aren't attracted to them. They've been taught to suppress their natural drives, ambition, competition, the desire to achieve, and then they wonder why they feel empty. I'm not advocating for a return to some mythical past where men were men and women knew their place, but I am saying that the pendulum has swung too far. In our attempt to correct real injustices, we've pathologized normal male behavior and created a culture that's hostile to masculinity itself. The result is a world full of what some call nice guys, men who've been so thoroughly socialized to be inoffensive that they've lost all their edges. They're agreeable to a fault. They seek consensus on everything. They're terrified of conflict. And they're miserable. The illusion of comfort. Part of the problem is that modern life is too comfortable. We've eliminated most of the challenges that our ancestors faced. We don't have to hunt for our food. We don't have to defend our territory. We don't have to endure physical hardship. This comfort is nice, but it comes at a cost. Without challenges, we don't grow. Without hardship, we don't develop resilience. Without the need to be strong, we become weak. Think about how muscles work. You can't build muscle without resistance. You have to stress the muscle fibers, literally tear them down, so that they rebuild stronger. If you never lift anything heavy, your muscles atrophy. The same is true of character. You can't develop courage without facing fear. You can't develop resilience without experiencing hardship. You can't develop strength without resistance. Modern comfort has atrophied our character. We've become soft. We avoid discomfort at all costs. We seek the path of least resistance. We medicate our anxiety rather than facing its source. And this softness makes us easy to control. When you're afraid of discomfort, anyone who can threaten you with discomfort can control you. Your boss, the government, the social mob. All they have to do is make you uncomfortable enough, and you'll comply. This is why developing strength, real strength, the kind that comes from voluntarily facing challenges, is not just good for you. It's essential for your freedom. The original sin. There's an ancient story about the first man. He lived in paradise. He had everything he could want, and then a test came. The story varies across traditions, but the essence is the same. The man was presented with a choice between doing what was easy and doing what was right, between following his own judgment and deferring to someone else's, between strength and weakness. He chose weakness, and according to the story, we've been paying for that choice ever since. Now, I'm not particularly religious, but I find this story fascinating as a psychological allegory. The original sin wasn't disobedience or pride or lust. The original sin was weakness. It was the failure to stand firm in the face of a test. It was the willingness to subordinate one's own judgment to someone else's. And we repeat this original sin every day. Every time we go along with something we know is wrong because it's easier. Every time we stay silent because speaking up would be uncomfortable. Every time we abdicate responsibility because taking charge is hard. The original sin is weakness, and the original virtue is strength. The world will test you. Here's something you need to understand. The world is constantly testing you. Not because it's malevolent, but because testing is how nature determines who's fit to survive and thrive. Women will test you. They'll see how you handle rejection, how you handle their moods, how you handle competition from other men. They're not being cruel. They're gathering data. They want to know if you're strong enough to be a worthy partner. Other men will test you. They'll try to establish dominance. They'll challenge your status. They'll see if you'll stand up for yourself or back down. The market will test you. It will go against your positions. It will create drawdowns. It will make you doubt your analysis. It's testing whether you have the discipline to follow your process or whether you'll crack under pressure. Life will test you. It will throw obstacles in your path. It will create setbacks. It will make you want to quit. It's testing whether you have what it takes to persevere. The question isn't whether you'll be tested. The question is whether you'll pass. And passing tests isn't about being perfect. It's about being solid. It's about having a core that doesn't crumble under pressure. It's about knowing who you are and not letting circumstances change that. Key takeaway: the world doesn't owe you comfort or fairness. It will test you, and those tests are opportunities to develop strength. The path to genuine power is through voluntarily facing challenges rather than avoiding them. Comfort is the enemy of growth. Reflection prompt: what's the last significant challenge you voluntarily took on? Not something forced on you, but something you chose because you knew it would make you stronger. If you can't think of one, what could you take on? Chapter 13. The 3 Essential Skills. Chapter summary. There are 3 domains that every man must develop competence in to be truly free: the ability to make money, the ability to attract and relate to women, and the ability to handle physical conflict. This chapter explores why these 3 skills are foundational and how to begin developing them. The tripod of freedom. After years of working with people and studying what makes some thrive while others struggle, I've identified 3 domains that are foundational. Master these and everything else becomes easier. Neglect them and you'll always feel incomplete. The 3 domains are: 1. Business, the ability to generate income independently. 2. Attraction, the ability to attract and relate to women or whatever gender you're drawn to. 3. Combat, the ability to defend yourself physically. Some people will object to this list. They'll say it's reductive, or that it promotes outdated gender roles, or that there are other things that matter more. And they're not entirely wrong. There are many things that matter in life: spirituality, art, friendship, service, knowledge. But these 3 domains are foundational in a specific sense. If you're lacking in any of them, it's very hard to feel fully confident and free. If you can't support yourself financially, you'll always be dependent on someone else. That dependence creates fear and compromises your integrity. You'll make decisions based on financial security rather than what you actually want. If you can't attract and relate to romantic partners, you'll always feel incomplete. The drive for connection is one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. You can't just ignore it or pretend it doesn't matter. If you can't defend yourself physically, you'll always be afraid. You'll avoid certain situations. You'll feel vulnerable. That fear will bleed into other areas of your life. None of this means you have to be a millionaire, a pickup artist, and a Navy SEAL, but you should be competent in each domain. You should know that you can take care of yourself. The order of operations. There's a specific order in which these skills should be developed. Get the order wrong, and you'll create problems for yourself. First, money. Before you focus on anything else, get your financial house in order. This doesn't mean becoming rich. It means becoming self-sufficient. You need to know that you can support yourself without depending on anyone else. The best way to do this is to develop skills that the market values. Sales is one of the most valuable skills you can learn. It transfers across industries and always commands a premium. Copywriting, marketing, coding, trading, all of these are skills that can generate income without requiring you to climb a corporate ladder. The key is independence. You don't want to be in a position where one person, your boss, your company, your industry, can destroy your livelihood with a single decision. Diversify your income streams. Build skills that are portable. Save money so you have a cushion. Second, attraction. Once you're financially stable, you can focus on your romantic life. This is the area that causes men the most pain, and the area where most of the bad advice circulates. The key insight here is that attraction is not something you do to someone. It's something you are. You can't trick someone into being attracted to you. You can't negotiate desire. You can't be so nice that she eventually comes around. What you can do is become more attractive. This means developing confidence, social skills, and an interesting life. It means getting in shape. It means dressing well. It means having passions and goals and a sense of purpose. And it means understanding that women are not puzzles to be solved. They're human beings with their own desires and preferences. Your job is not to manipulate them. It's to become the kind of man that the women you're attracted to would naturally be attracted to. Third, combat. The ability to defend yourself is the foundation of confidence. When you know you can handle yourself in a physical confrontation, you carry yourself differently. You're more relaxed, you're less likely to be targeted, and if something does happen, you're prepared. This doesn't mean you need to become a fighter. It means you should have basic competence in self-defense. Take a boxing class, learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, get comfortable with firearms and learn to use them safely. The specific discipline matters less than the competence and confidence it builds. And here's something important. Developing combat skills teaches you something that nothing else can. It teaches you that you can face pain and survive. When you've been punched in the face and kept going, verbal rejections don't seem so scary. When you've sparred with someone bigger and stronger, office politics seem trivial. Combat training is exposure therapy for the fear of physical confrontation. And when that fear diminishes, a lot of other fears diminish with it. The compounding effect. Here's the beautiful thing about developing these three skills. They reinforce each other. When you're financially independent, you're more confident. That confidence makes you more attractive. That attractiveness makes you more successful socially, which opens up more opportunities, which makes you more financially successful. When you know you can defend yourself, you carry yourself with more confidence. That confidence makes people respect you more. That respect makes it easier to succeed in business and relationships. Each domain creates a positive feedback loop with the others. Neglect one, and the others suffer. Develop all three, and your life transforms. Key takeaway. Financial independence, romantic competence, and physical capability are the three pillars of masculine confidence. Develop them in that order. Each reinforces the others, creating a positive spiral that makes everything else in life easier. Reflection prompt. Which of the three domains is your weakest? What's one concrete step you could take this week to begin strengthening it? Chapter 14. The Will to Fight. Chapter summary. At the core of every strong person is the willingness to fight. Not just physically, but psychologically. This chapter explores why the will to fight is essential, how it's been systematically suppressed in modern culture, and how to rekindle it in yourself. The dangerous man. A man who isn't dangerous isn't much of a man. I know this statement will make some people uncomfortable, but stay with me, because there's an important truth here. When I say dangerous, I don't mean violent. I don't mean aggressive. I don't mean looking for fights. I mean capable. I mean that if a situation required force, you could provide it. I mean that you're not helpless. I mean that you have the capacity for violence, but the wisdom to control it. Think about this paradox. The man who can fight is less likely to have to fight. Why? Because he carries himself differently. He doesn't project victimhood. Predators, whether they're bullies, criminals, or just aggressive jerks, look for easy targets. They don't pick on the guy who looks like he can handle himself. Beyond physical safety, there's a psychological component to being capable of violence. When you know you could defend yourself if necessary, you're more confident in every situation. You're less afraid. You're more willing to take risks. You're more assertive. This isn't about being a tough guy. It's about removing the fear of physical confrontation from your psychological landscape. When that fear is gone, a lot of other fears go with it. The taming of male aggression. For most of human history, the ability to fight was essential. Men who couldn't defend themselves or their families didn't survive. This shaped our psychology in profound ways. The drive to be capable of violence is not a social construct. It's built into our biology. But modern society has systematically suppressed this drive. From the earliest age, boys are taught that fighting is wrong, that aggression is bad, that they should use their words, not their fists. This isn't entirely wrong. Violence should never be the first resort. But we've gone too far. We've taught boys that any expression of aggression is pathological. We've pathologized normal male psychology. And we've created a generation of men who are afraid of conflict in any form, physical, verbal, social. This is a problem, because conflict is inevitable. And when you're afraid of conflict, you become a doormat. You let people walk over you. You avoid necessary confrontations. You swallow your anger until it turns into depression or explodes in unhealthy ways. The solution is not to become aggressive. It's to become capable, to know that you can handle conflict if it comes, to have the will to fight when fighting is necessary. The three types of people I've observed that there are three types of people in the world when it comes to conflict. The prey. These are people who can't or won't defend themselves. They avoid conflict at all costs. When confronted, they submit. They're the ones who get bullied, taken advantage of, and walked over. The predator. These are people who use aggression to get what they want. They prey on the weak. They're bullies, criminals, and tyrants. They're dangerous, but not in the way I mean when I say a man should be dangerous. The alpha predator. These are people who are capable of violence but choose when to use it. They don't start fights, but they finish them. They're strong enough to be gentle. They're dangerous enough that predators leave them alone. The goal is to be an alpha predator. Not a predator who victimizes others, but someone who's strong enough that no one victimizes them. Someone who has the capacity for violence, but the wisdom to use it only when necessary. The ritual of combat. Throughout history, cultures have had rituals for channeling male aggression. Sports, martial arts, rites of passage. These rituals allowed men to test themselves against each other in controlled ways, to develop competence and confidence, to prove their worth. Modern society has largely eliminated these rituals. We've replaced them with what? Video games? Fantasy football? These are pale substitutes that don't satisfy the underlying need. This is one reason why combat sports and martial arts are so valuable. They provide a controlled environment for men to test themselves. They teach discipline, resilience, and respect. They satisfy the need for physical challenge in a way that's constructive rather than destructive. If you've never trained in a combat sport, I strongly encourage you to try. Boxing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, wrestling, any of these will do. What matters is that you're learning to handle yourself in a physical confrontation, and that you're doing it in an environment that's safe and structured. The first time you spar, really spar, where someone is trying to hit you and you're trying to hit them, your entire perspective shifts. You learn things about yourself that you can't learn any other way. You face fear directly. You discover that you can take a hit and keep going. You develop a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you've been tested. Key takeaway: the will to fight, the capacity for controlled, justified aggression, is an essential component of masculine psychology. Developing combat skills isn't about becoming violent. It's about becoming confident, capable, and free from fear. Reflection prompt: what's your relationship with physical conflict? Are you afraid of it? Do you avoid it? Have you ever trained in a combat sport? If not, what's stopping you? Chapter 15, The Honor Code. Chapter summary: strength without honor is just brutality. This chapter explores what it means to live by a code, to have principles that guide your behavior and that you won't compromise for anyone. We'll look at why having a code is essential for self-respect and how to develop your own. Why honor matters. Imagine two strong men. The first is strong but without principles. He uses his strength to take what he wants. He bullies the weak. He lies and cheats when it suits him. He has no loyalty except to himself. The second is strong and principled. He uses his strength to protect. He's honest even when it costs him. He's loyal to his friends and his word. He has a code, and he lives by it. Which man do you respect more? Which man would you trust? Which man would you want to be? Strength without honor is just brutality. It's the strength of the bully, the tyrant, the abuser. It commands fear, but never respect. Strength with honor is authentic power. It's the strength of the protector, the leader, the hero. It commands both fear and respect, but the fear is from enemies, not friends. This is why developing a personal code is so important. Your code defines who you are. It sets the boundaries that you won't cross. It gives you a framework for making decisions. It's the foundation of your integrity. The elements of an honor code. Every man's code will be different, but there are some elements that are universal. Honesty. Say what you mean and mean what you say. Don't lie, especially to yourself. Don't make promises you can't keep. When you give your word, honor it. Loyalty. Be loyal to the people who are loyal to you. Don't betray trust. Don't talk behind people's backs. If you have a problem with someone, address it directly. Courage. Don't run from fear. Face difficult situations head on. Stand up for what's right, even when it's uncomfortable. Be willing to take risks for things that matter. Discipline. Do what needs to be done, even when you don't feel like it. Control your impulses. Delay gratification. Keep your commitments to yourself. Responsibility. Take ownership of your life and your choices. Don't blame others for your problems. Don't make excuses. When you mess up, own it and fix it. Respect. Treat others with respect, not because they've earned it, but because that's the kind of person you are. Respect yourself enough to have standards and boundaries. These aren't just nice ideas, they're practical tools for living a good life. When you have a code, decisions become easier. You don't have to agonize over what to do, you just consult your principles and act accordingly. The cost of having a code, living. By a code isn't easy. It will cost you. It might cost you money. You might lose a business deal because you refuse to lie or cut corners. It might cost you relationships. You might lose friends who don't share your values. You might lose a romantic partner who wanted you to compromise your principles. It might cost you comfort. Doing the right thing is often harder than doing the easy thing. It requires sacrifice, it requires effort, it requires facing things you'd rather avoid. But the alternative is worse. Living without a code means living without self-respect. And a life without self-respect is barely a life at all. Every time you compromise your principles, a little piece of you dies. You become a little less yourself. You lose a little more of your integrity. And over time, you become someone you don't recognize and don't respect. The cost of having a code is high, but the cost of not having one is higher. Good versus good at being a man. There's an important distinction I want to make because it's often misunderstood. There's a difference between being a good man as society defines it and being good at being a man. Society's definition of a good man is someone who's compliant. He doesn't make waves. He puts others' needs before his own. He's sensitive, agreeable, and non-threatening. He's essentially been neutered. Being good at being a man is something different. It means being strong, capable, and principled. It means having boundaries and enforcing them. It means being willing to take charge when leadership is needed. It means being someone others can rely on, not because you're a doormat, but because you're solid. These two definitions are often in conflict. Society wants you to be compliant. Your nature demands you be strong. Society wants you to be agreeable. Your integrity demands you stand for something. Being a man, a real man, not society's caricature, means choosing integrity over approval. It means being willing to be seen as bad by a society whose values are broken. Remember, in a society that's lost its way, being called bad might be a compliment. Key takeaway: strength without honor is brutality. Develop a personal code, a set of principles you won't compromise, and live by it. Your code is the foundation of your self-respect, and self-respect is the foundation of everything else. Reflection prompt: what are the principles you already live by? Write them down. Are there any you've been compromising? What would need to change for you to live fully in alignment with your code? Previously in this book, we've explored the nature of power, the 3 essential skills every man needs, the will to fight, and the importance of living by a code. Now we're going to bring everything together by exploring the inner practices that make all of this possible, the work of quieting the mind, developing self-awareness, and connecting with your deeper self. Part 5, the practice. Cultivating your inner voice. Chapter 16, Why You Must Feel. Chapter summary. Many people try to numb themselves to avoid pain, but numbing yourself to pain also numbs you to joy, connection, and aliveness. This chapter explores why feeling your emotions fully, even the uncomfortable ones, is essential for a rich life, and how to begin reconnecting with your feelings if you've been numb. The numbness epidemic. I see it everywhere. Men walking through life like zombies. They're physically present, but emotionally absent. They've learned to numb themselves so thoroughly that they barely feel anything anymore. Some numb with alcohol, some with pornography, some with endless hours of television and video games, some with workaholism, some with drugs, some with food. The specific numbing agent doesn't matter. What matters is the effect, a life half lived. A life where the highs aren't that high and the lows are just a dull ache that never quite goes away. I know this state because I've been there. After my mother died, I fell into a fog that lasted for months. I wasn't depressed in the clinical sense. I was still functioning, still working, still going through the motions. But the colour had drained out of life. Nothing excited me. Nothing moved me. I was just existing. What I eventually realised was that I had shut down my emotions. I didn't want to feel the grief, so I shut down all feeling. The problem is, you can't selectively numb. When you numb the pain, you also numb the joy. When you shut out the sadness, you also shut out the love. The path back to aliveness wasn't through more numbing. It was through feeling, through letting myself experience the grief I'd been avoiding, through crying when I needed to cry, through being present with the pain instead of running from it. Emotions as information. Here's a reframe that helped me enormously. Emotions aren't problems to be solved. They're information to be understood. Anger isn't bad. It's telling you that a boundary has been crossed, or that something you value is being threatened. The question isn't how do I stop being angry, it's what is my anger telling me? Fear isn't bad. It's telling you that you're approaching something important, something that matters. The question isn't how do I stop being afraid, it's what am I afraid of losing or failing at. Sadness isn't bad. It's telling you that you've lost something meaningful. The question isn't how do I stop being sad, it's what did I value that I've lost. Jealousy isn't bad. It's telling you that you want something you don't have, or that you're afraid of losing something you do have. It's information about your desires and insecurities. When you treat emotions as information rather than problems, everything changes. You stop trying to escape your feelings and start listening to them. You stop numbing yourself and start paying attention. The emotional gym. Just like physical fitness, emotional fitness requires regular training. You can't expect to handle intense emotions in high-pressure situations if you never practice feeling in low-pressure situations. This is where practices like meditation, journaling, and therapy come in. They're like going to the gym for your emotions. When you meditate, you practice sitting with discomfort. Your mind wants to run away from the present moment, to plan, to worry, to fantasize. You practice bringing it back, over and over. This builds the muscle of attention and the capacity to be with whatever arises without needing to escape. When you journal, you practice articulating your feelings. You put words to what's going on inside you. This creates distance between you and your emotions. Not distance that's about avoidance, but distance that allows you to observe rather than being completely identified with every feeling. When you do therapy or join a group like a trading tribe, you practice sharing your feelings with others. You learn that feelings you thought were unique to you are actually universal. You learn that being vulnerable doesn't destroy you. It connects you. The physiology of confidence. Here's something fascinating that most people don't realize. Your body and your mind are a two-way street. You think that your mind controls your body. When you feel confident, you stand up straight. But it also works in reverse. When you stand up straight, you start to feel more confident. This is called embodied cognition, and it's one of the most powerful tools you have for changing your emotional state. When you're feeling nervous, your body naturally contracts. Your shoulders hunch. Your breathing becomes shallow. Your movements become jerky. This is an automatic response, but you can override it. You can deliberately stand up straight. You can deliberately breathe deeply. You can deliberately slow down your movements, and when you do, your brain gets the signal that you're calm and confident, and it adjusts your emotional state accordingly. This is why I emphasize body language so much. It's not just about how others perceive you, it's about how you perceive yourself. When you carry yourself like a confident person, you become more confident. It's a feedback loop, and you can enter it from either direction. The roaring lion. There's a metaphor I love. It comes from an old movie, but it captures something essential about the human spirit. The lion is the king of the jungle. He doesn't have to prove anything. He doesn't have to roar constantly to remind everyone of his presence. He just is. And everyone knows. But if you cage a lion long enough, he forgets what he is. He forgets that he's the king. He starts acting like the other caged animals, docile, defeated, spirit broken. Many men are like caged lions. They've been told their whole lives that their nature is wrong, that their strength is threatening, that their desires are shameful. They've been domesticated, neutered, tamed, but the lion is still in there. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's just forgotten who it is. The work of reclaiming yourself, of reconnecting with your emotions, your strength, your authentic nature, is the work of reminding the lion who he is. It's the work of remembering that you're not meant to live in a cage. And when the lion remembers who he is, when he roars, the wolves scatter. The forces that kept him caged suddenly seem much less powerful. The fears that kept him small suddenly seem ridiculous. Remember who you are, not who society told you to be, not who your parents wanted you to be, not who you pretend to be to fit in. Who you actually are at your core. There is a fire in you. It may have been reduced to embers. It may be buried under years of suppression and numbness, but it's still there, and it can be rekindled. Key takeaway: numbing yourself to avoid pain also numbs you to joy. The path to aliveness is through feeling, fully and without resistance. Emotions are information, not problems, and your body can be used to change your emotional state, not just reflect it. Reflection prompt: what emotions have you been avoiding? What would it look like to let yourself feel them fully, without resistance, for just 5 minutes? Chapter 17. The Quiet Practice. Chapter Summary. All the principles in this book, surrender, emotional mastery, authentic confidence, require a foundation of inner quiet to implement. This chapter explores meditation and related practices as essential training for the mind and provides practical guidance for getting started. The monkey mind. I once heard a meditation teacher describe the untrained mind as a monkey mind, constantly swinging from branch to branch, never settling, always in motion. Can you relate to that? I certainly can. When I first tried to meditate, I was shocked at how noisy my mind was. I'd sit down, close my eyes, and try to focus on my breath. Within seconds, I'd be thinking about a trade I had on. Then I'd be thinking about an argument I'd had. Then I'd be thinking about what to have for dinner. Then I'd realize I was supposed to be meditating, and I'd try to focus on my breath again for about 3 seconds, before the next thought hijacked my attention. This is normal. The mind is a thought-generating machine. It produces thoughts the way the heart produces beats. You can't stop it, and trying to stop it just creates frustration. The goal of meditation isn't to stop thinking. It's to change your relationship to your thoughts. Instead of being carried away by every thought, you learn to watch them arise and pass. You learn that you are not your thoughts. You're the awareness that observes them. This is a profound shift. When you realize that you're not your thoughts, you gain freedom from them. A fearful thought can arise without you becoming afraid. An angry thought can arise without you becoming angry. You can observe the thought, acknowledge it, and let it pass. This is exactly the skill you need for trading, for relationships, for life. When the market moves against you and your mind starts generating fearful thoughts, you can observe them without acting on them. When a woman tests you and your mind starts generating reactive thoughts, you can observe them without taking the bait. Getting started. If you've never meditated before, here's how to begin. Find a quiet place where you won't be disturbed. Sit comfortably. You don't need to twist yourself into a pretzel. A chair is fine. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Close your eyes and bring your attention to your breath. Notice the sensation of the air moving in and out of your nose. Notice your chest or belly rising and falling. Within seconds, your mind will wander. That's fine. When you notice that your attention has drifted, gently bring it back to the breath. Don't judge yourself. Don't get frustrated. Just return. Do this for 5 minutes. Tomorrow, do it again. The next day, try 6 minutes. Gradually extend your practice. That's it. It's simple. It's also hard. but it's worth it. Beyond meditation. Meditation isn't the only practice that cultivates inner quiet. Here are some others that work similarly. Yoga. The physical practice of yoga is essentially meditation in motion. You focus on your breath while holding challenging poses. You learn to be comfortable in discomfort. You develop body awareness and presence. Running or walking without headphones. Many people use exercise as another form of numbing. They blast music or podcasts and check out mentally. Try exercising in silence. Pay attention to your breath, your footsteps, your surroundings. It's a form of moving meditation. Journaling. Writing down your thoughts and feelings each day creates distance from them. You become an observer of your own mind. You start to notice patterns, and the act of articulating your inner experience helps you process it. Sitting in nature. Go somewhere beautiful and just sit. No phone, no book, no agenda. Just be present with what's around you. Listen to the sounds, feel the air, watch the light change. Cold exposure. This might sound odd, but deliberately exposing yourself to cold, a cold shower, an ice bath, is a powerful practice for developing equanimity. You learn to stay calm when your body is screaming at you to escape. That's a transferable skill. The specific practice matters less than the consistency. Find something that works for you and do it every day. Even 5 minutes of daily practice will change your life over time. The inner voice emerges. Here's what happens when you commit to a regular practice of inner quiet. At first, nothing seems to change. You're still the same person with the same problems. Meditation feels like a chore. You wonder if you're doing it right. Then, gradually, you start to notice something. There's a little more space between stimulus and response. You feel a flash of anger, but you don't immediately act on it. You feel the urge to check your phone, but you can let it pass. This space grows over time. And in that space, something new emerges. I call it the inner voice. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It's quiet and still and wise. It knows things that your analytical mind doesn't know. It sees things that your emotional reactions obscure. This is the voice that successful traders learn to listen to. It's the voice that tells them to cut a loss, even when every analytical reason says to hold on. It's the voice that tells them to add to a winner, even when every emotional instinct says to take profits. It's also the voice that guides you in relationships. It's the voice that tells you when someone is good for you and when they're not. It's the voice that knows when to lean in and when to lean back. Cultivating this inner voice is the ultimate goal of all the practices I've described. It's the master skill that makes all other skills work. Key takeaway. Meditation and related practices are not luxuries or optional extras. They're essential training for the mind. They create the inner quiet that allows your inner voice to emerge. Start small, be consistent, and trust the process. Reflection prompt. Do you have a regular practice of inner quiet? If not, what's the smallest commitment you could make, 2 minutes a day, 5 minutes a week, that you'd actually follow through on? Chapter 18, The Abundance of Everything. Chapter summary. We end where we began, with the recognition that the quality of your life depends on the quality of your relationship with yourself. This chapter ties together the threads we've explored and points toward the ongoing work of becoming who you're meant to be. The common thread. We've covered a lot of ground in this book. Trading psychology, attraction and confidence, masculine power, emotional mastery, meditation and inner work. On the surface, these seem like different topics, but there's a common thread that runs through all of them. The common thread is this: your relationship with yourself determines the quality of your life. If you can't handle being wrong, you'll never be a successful trader or a successful anything. If you can't handle rejection, you'll never have the relationships you want. If you can't handle discomfort, you'll never grow. The work is always inner work. The obstacle is always yourself. The continuous path. I want to be clear about something. This work never ends. You don't reach a point where you're done, where you've achieved perfect emotional mastery and never struggle again. There's no finish line where you get to stop practicing. The market wizards I know, traders who've been profitable for decades, still do their inner work every day. They still meditate. They still journal. They still face emotional challenges. They've just gotten better at handling them. The same is true of the most confident, attractive people I know. They still have moments of insecurity. They still face rejection. They still feel fear. They've just learned to feel those things without being controlled by them. This is not a destination. It's a practice. It's something you do every day for the rest of your life. But here's the good news. It gets easier. The practices that feel awkward and artificial at first become natural. The emotions that once overwhelmed you become manageable. The fears that once paralyzed you become manageable. And as you progress, your life transforms. Not because your circumstances change, but because you change. You become more resilient, more present, more alive, more you. The abundance of everything. Let me leave you with a final image. Imagine living your life from a place of abundance rather than scarcity. Not just abundance of money, though that's nice. Abundance of everything. Abundance of confidence. You don't need to prove anything because you already know who you are. Abundance of options. You don't need any particular outcome because you know you'll be fine either way. Abundance of resilience. You don't fear failure because you know you can handle it and learn from it. Abundance of presence. You're not lost in the past or future because you're fully here, now. This is possible. Not easy, but possible. The path is the one we've mapped in this book. Keep your losses small, in trading, in relationships, in life. Don't let any single setback destroy you. Develop your inner game. Do the psychological work. It's more important than any technique or strategy. Face challenges voluntarily. The only way to become strong is to do hard things. Feel your feelings fully. Don't numb yourself. Emotions are information and energy. Use them. Cultivate the quiet. Find a practice that stills your mind and do it every day. Listen to your inner voice. It's the wisest guide you have, and it's been waiting for you to pay attention. This is the inner game of everything. Master it, and everything else follows. A final exercise. I want to leave you with one final exercise. It's simple but powerful. Find a quiet place. Sit down. Close your eyes. Take 3 deep breaths. Now imagine the person you want to become, not who you are now, who you'll be in 5 years if you do this work consistently. See them clearly. How do they carry themselves? How do they speak? How do they handle difficult situations? What's the expression on their face? Now for the next 60 seconds, be that person. Stand like them. Breathe like them. Feel what it feels like to be them. When the 60 seconds are up, open your eyes. That person isn't somewhere in the distant future. That person is a possibility that exists in this moment. And every day, through your choices and your practices, you move closer to them or further away. The choice is yours. It always has been. The end.